Hello, everyone. Once again, I decided to get into the weeds of Ripple XRP. And as you guys know, in the past, I was provided a particular document, and it was from the Bank of Indonesia, the Central Bank of Indonesia. So, in that document, there is quite a few things to get into that would take way too much time to put it all into one video. So, I saved some for this particular outline, and more in particular, I want you guys to understand that document is 153 pages. It would take you quite a bit of time to get into it. But more importantly, what do I have and why does it really matter? Well, we're going to start off the outline like this, and that is referencing a few other particular researchers out there in the XRP community, as well as provide you some of my own key research. But again, jumping back to some crucial elements from this particular PDF. And without further ado, consider smashing that like, and let's just simply get into the material. So what is this about? Well, check this out. Let's start things off with a call to action. And that basically is from the one and only Mr. Man. Yes, Spidey himself. He put together this particular clip, and this is not the bombshell, but I want to state this as a nice way to introduce things, because as we know, it's this radical shift about going to this new money system, right? How many times have we heard that Ripple's XRP is a world bridge currency, the new global bridge currency, I should say. So listen to this. Let me know what you think in regards to this call to action. We'll play it, and then if anything, we'll tie in so many darn things that you aren't aware of. I'm telling you flat out, if you skip my material, I get it. A lot of people do, but there's some that will stick around. If you're a person that's really serious about Ripple XRP, if anything, if I'm talking to you, yeah, you, the guy that's distracted with all the stuff going on in your life right now, you might want to stick around for this one. Let's go ahead and full screen this, come back, and get into the material. Here we go.
I see at least a 30% pullback in the very short term.
Yeah. So what do? Do you buy some of your favorite names when we're down 10%, or you want to wait until you're 20% and that's a real correction?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely wait until we get into correction territory before we buy the dip, because even though I love buying the dip, this is not a normal dip correction territory. This is something that's more systemic and is going to take longer to figure out, and it actually might be bigger than 30. So we just want to be more cautious. I hate to alarm you, but I'm telling you, this is what the economic indicators are indicating.
I understand what you're saying. So, I mean, Mark Faber came out. He called the 87 crash.
Yep.
Remember him, of the gloom and doom
Yes.
report. You know, he's saying much of the same, how the Mag 7 is gambling, and, you know, what do you tell them to buy then when you're 30% down? What do you buy?
Right now, our strategy is what we call bridge assets that we know do well in a transfer of either economic activity as far as systemic global finance, you know, happening and stimulating, keeping the prices up. So we would look at commodities, gold, silver, the bridge assets to get us from whatever we're in to where we're going. Those are going to do well. We expect gold to be 2,600 by the end of the year at least. It could be 3,000 depending on what happens between now and then.
Right.
So if you really want to protect value, you need to go to those commodities that will get you to protect value and not take the AI bet, which is a gamble right now. AI has a long runway, Nicole, but it is bumping up against this global crash.
Take profits on AI.
Take profits on.
Okay, so call to action in regards to bridge assets. Clear as day. Do I have more? I do. Check this out. This is also from another great researcher. Shout out to the one and only Smoke, aka Smoke Dog. He gets really into the weeds of things, does he not? Hopefully you guys are following some of these guys that provide you great research. So in this, I guess you could say, dive that he does, I decided to get into it and also connect it more back to some of the things I'm going to show you in that PDF here in a bit. But more importantly, it's recognizing at least his research research and why it matters. International financial system, of course, is broken. Ripple presents a solution, of course, to fix it. Confirmed. Following the 2008 financial crisis, there was a clear demand to reform interbank payments, and Ripple emerged as a top contender among the proposed solutions. Carefully review the document on the left. We're going to do that here in a bit, but in the quotation, it says Ripple doesn't aim to replace the current financial infrastructure, but rather integrate into it, much like an app, for example, on the iPhone. So I'm going to go ahead and blow this up a little bit more to show you guys what I'm talking about, or what he's talking about. Key highlights in regards to some of this. And like you see on the screen, today's international payments system is, of course, broken. Already mentioned that. But could Ripple be the cure? Well, the Federal Reserve is proposing reforms, of course, to the United States payment system, but more importantly, understanding that the ability of the United States consumers and businesses to send and receive convenient, cost-effective, and timely cross-border payments is one of 5 desired outcomes to improve the modern-day payment system infrastructure. The Federal Reserve identified the problem, and again, look what it says. Santander Bank estimates that distributed ledger technologies could save banks up to $20 billion a year in infrastructure costs related to cross-border payments. I'm telling you flat out, guys, I've stated this once, I'll state it again. I've been covering this for, I don't know, maybe almost 3 years now. How many times have I provided you examples in regards to the big money players, the central banks and so on? They will have the incentive moving forward to want to move more money. And people can't fathom that. You know, the old system is designed that it doesn't really give the incentive for the big banks to want to move that money. And that's going to radically change. How so? Well, again, it's saving banks tremendous amounts of money because you have a new mechanism that's going to be a better solution. Where am I going with this? Well, back to Smoke. Because in his outline, it talks about how Ripple provides a secure way to send money across borders compared to the traditional system. But again, not abandoning the traditional system completely, but providing a bridge currency. So Ripple, as we know, is open source internet protocol. Ripple does not propose to replace the current financial infrastructure, but again, like back to what I was saying, instead it intends to become part of it, much like an app on the iPhone. Ripple provides the rail on which payments, of course, move. As we get more into this, I want to share another particular one, again from Smoke. Ripple is closest to what investment banks are looking for and is closer to what traditional banks do today. Documented, right? Absolutely. This is why the banks will ultimately choose Ripple as a settlement platform for payments and, of course, remittances. To blow it up a little bit more about what he's talking about, here's a citation from advisor.morganstanley.com. And like it says, proof of stake is a popular lower energy alternative. Proof of stake, which requires the transaction checkers to deposit some cryptocurrency as collateral. But the bottom line is this a reference to Morgan Stanley because, you know, it's interesting to see the highlights, and Smoke gets to the point. Energy will definitely intensify data, and basically they note that XRP's consensus protocol system is comparatively much more efficient, of course, than Bitcoin's proof of work blockchain. Takes 3 to 5 seconds for the XRP ledger to confirm each block versus 10 minutes, or actually, last I saw, longer than that, right? For, of course, blockchain. In this example, of course, the examples of BTC. Though we would add that Ripple have created a payment system, you have to keep in mind it's what requires the centralized intermediary to check transactions. So it isn't directly comparable to BTC and their system, and of course, what's closer to what traditional banks do today. I mean, traditional banks are not going to do, you know, cross-border payments because BTC moves too slow, right? They're not going to use that. They're going to use something like Ripple's XRP, Stellar XLM, some of these other ones, right? So the other thing I want to jump into is this. Back to the whole thing about that Morgan Stanley citation, because prominent multinational Morgan Stanley Bank, of course, endorsed Ripple and XRP. And that was reported last month on August 8th, 2024. Many researchers and content creators, influencers, whatever you want to call them, have been covering this. So I'm not going to give you something that everybody's been covering, but more importantly, I want you guys to understand, again, I always say it, maybe it sounds like I'm a broken record at this point, but it's the bigger picture. And look what it says. Great visuals from Smoke. Always does, man, A+, right? One interface for payments across any network. And on the bottom right, like it says, confidential. I don't know if somebody leaked this out and it's part of an NDA, but Ripple's API. You see how we have the comparisons when it comes to stacks. But more importantly, it's all there. You have the API integration, you have liquidity, you have governance, rule sets, especially messaging, right? Especially when it comes to incorporating ISO 222, but more importantly, settlement infrastructure. And I would agree with some of this, all-in-one solution provides everything that we could possibly ask for a payment network can thrive. But now that we have this, hopefully the end of the SEC issue, we can see this thing finally get adoption. And for all the people who are flooding XRP, you never gave it a proper chance. Some people say, well, never gave it a proper chance. I've been waiting 7 years, right? But again, who suppressed it? Was it people in retail? No. The SEC. Moving forward, the other thing I want to get into, and this is, in my opinion, what really stands out, and again, I shout out to Smoke and all these other guys. Back to Bank Indonesia, De Nederlandsche Bank International Conference on Payment Systems and Fintech. Back to that citation of Bank of Indonesia Institute from this 2019 report, and back to what you saw Smoke talk about, back to what you saw Mr. Man talk about, and that is Ripple XRP truly that world reserve currency? And if anything, I mean, if you get really into the weeds of things, a global bridge currency. Not abandoning the old traditional system, but if anything, providing a real solution that is going to take us from that old TradeFi sector to the new thing of potentially Web 3.0. Let's jump into this. I'm going to share some key things to pound home what they mentioned, and if anything, to give you some of my own particular research. So as you can see right here, we have some things to get into, and I'm not going to get into a whole slew of things, 153 pages, because that would take too long. But when you see statements like this, back to what I covered before, and that is funding relationships, bank providers, partners, how it all came together. It says specifically in 2016, the concept of Ripple, they came up with a experiment with 12 banks. Remember I talked about this before? And basically, they didn't have any pre-funding relationship with one another, but they gave them a bunch of XRP. Ripple did this many years ago, which is a digital asset. Asked them to use that as a bridge currency. In the past, pre-funding looks something like, what they show on that slide, but the bottom line is giving them this amount of XRP because bank and payment providers were able to leverage digital assets to sort liquidity, of course, in real time. Back to the statement, once again, they gave a bunch of XRP to those first banks and asked them to participate in an experiment to settle using XRP as what? Bridge asset to connect fiats. Plain as day. I don't know why some people still are second guessing that. But as I get more into this other part, I think you should pay attention to. So this guy who is no longer part of Ripple, right? He went on to do some things with Fireblocks and Amazon, right? Mr. Cigar. So Cigar points out that he will take 2 minutes to talk about digital asset regulatory landscape. But more importantly, I want you guys to understand that he recognized a long time ago, as well as these other banks, that there was concerns about digital assets and how it would come into fruition eventually. He believed at that time, dating back to 2018, 2019, give or take, that although our digital assets cannot be used for payments in their purest form, they are using this as what? Back to what Mr. Mann was saying, back to what Smoke was saying. Bridge asset to connect fiat currencies. And again, back to what Smoke was talking about. Ripple is not trying to replace or even complement fiat currencies, but what they are definitely trying to do is connect fiats across the globe using the tech to make cross-border payments more efficient. And for this to actually take off, they need regulations. I don't understand why people can't see that. And that is not me picking on you guys. You guys, if anything, for the most part, most of the people that watch the content understand the bigger picture, but there's always some random people, and I get it. We are not a society where everybody agrees on everything, but we can at least agree to disagree. And if anything, take the material at face value if you choose to do so, but understanding that, in my opinion, based off of the research, this was all strategically put together years ago. And how is that? Let's full screen it. Let's jump back into this and why it basically matters. So, if Ripple's not going to replace or even complement fiat currencies, then more importantly, what about this topic about bridging? Well, it goes on to mention this, and they do reference some things I've seen other content creators talking about recently, and that is some of the citations to GoPay. And I'm sure some of you guys are familiar with GoPay, but here's the thing. When we talk about financial inclusion, you have to keep in mind it's expanding access to the products. Back to that whole thing of the Apple analogy, because the Apple analogy is great. It's like a store, right? So before they were onboarded as Gojek drivers, and before they start accepting GoPay, they typically did not have access to a bank account. Again, for me, you're about to see how we pound it home once again with that concept of the Finternet. But you have to also keep in mind that is how it all gets introduced to the bigger players. And again, this reference to a bridge. Look what it says. Because under the section, was it 109 out of 153, they talk specifically about payment systems and fintech, but more importantly, they believe that you have to establish a bridge between the unbanked and the banking sector, thus providing access to financial products. And look what it mentions. They believe that they are the bridge, as in Ripple, that connects MSMEs and the financial industry. And if you're wondering what that stands for, it means medium to small, medium enterprises. They believe payments are the easiest entry to the financial sector. They believe a collaboration with, obviously, Ripple. But again, back to the whole thing of banks. And more importantly, if you were wondering about where I'm going with this whole thing of the Finternet, look what it says in regards to telecommunication companies. Look what it says in regards to driving loans and capital for them. You know, buy a mobile phone, enable them to work. They provide the access to Social Security products, healthcare, insurance, you name it. But again, this reference to this whole thing of the Bank of Indonesia, the Central Bank of Indonesia. Some people feel as though that's not that big of a deal. And I'm going to tell you flat out, it is more than a big deal, because it's going to pound home everything here in a bit. So the other thing I want to get into is, you know, they have this reference about fintech. They have this reference about, you know, financial inclusion, but the players that are inspired to serve the unbanked and underbanked in Indonesia. I mean, say what you want. Yeah, we're talking about Ripple's XRP, but how many times do you see Stellar talk about some of this stuff? But again, back to the topic about Indonesia. So I decided to jump again more into this, go down to the rabbit hole once again, and look what it says again, to pound it all home, they see themselves as a bridge infrastructure connecting everything because you cannot do it all alone. There also has to be other fintech players to provide the signatures, and more importantly, get to the part where we have adoption and inclusion and have these faster technologies get to the goal of accomplishing just that. There's this other statement that I feel as though is really going to pound it home, and that is understanding when you see concepts in the light of day get put together, like I said, fintechs, some in the past have gotten absorbed, but more importantly, it's understanding that they eventually will work with banks. That's already happening. They, as in Ripple, have solutions that are basically going to matchmake, like it says, the borrower and the lender, but not many P2P are actually working as a classic peer-to-peer. They typically start acting up as a bridge between retailers and savers. As we know, Ripple is not focused on retail, but could that change in the future after they get what they need to do as far as, you know, providing a real true solution for the big institutions? And that, of course, takes me now over to this, because they definitely have, in my eyes and many others, a real solution. Back to that citation from Gojek, and look what it says, a payment solution. Goes on to say here that due to evolving and dynamic characteristics, the risk is very difficult to predict. That was back in, of course, 2018, 2019, but things should turn around, right? From a regulatory point of view, along with the assessments and looking at the matter through an open dialogue to get there with the financial sector. And look what it goes on to mention specifically in this document. And if you've never seen my other deep dive about this, this document is not even available on the internet. Shout out to Quant Papa for providing me this. And we got down the rabbit hole of why is this taken off? It might be due to NDAs. We don't know. But again, when you see that Ripple had a call to action way back before they got attacked by the SEC about collaborating or stimulating solutions to pave the way, I think that's where it's always been for them, you know? And again, understanding that the role of central banks as an authority is to control payment systems, right? I mean, people say, well, this sounds centralized. Well, yeah, central banks, it's literally in their name. But where do we see central banks being equipped with some of these key things to get to the point of what they call transformation? And guess what? When I got more into this guy started to stand out with my analysis. So central banks need to be equipped with an appropriate strategy to deliver solutions to regulate the payment system in this digital era. And recently, Governor of Bank of Indonesia, Peri Warjiyo, not pronouncing it right, outlined 5 Indonesia's payment systems. They're called IPS 2025 vision. A 2025 vision all the way back in 2018, 2019. And again, this is where I feel as though that 2025 has definitely been something that was strategically planned years ago. And if you're new to all this, how is that? Well, once again, ISO 222, that November 2025 mandate. So you may think, well, this is a stretch, and you're just trying to fish for things out of 2025. A little bit. Is that so bad? I'm trying to provide solid content, but at the same time, recognize some key things, because I think personally, this whole thing from this deleted PDF pounds home the whole concept of what Ripple was looking to accomplish years ago, and they probably could have got to more of that mass adoption already, but again, the whole thing of the SEC happened basically. So I'm gonna full screen this. I want you guys to see a little bit more about this specific person, and that is this guy. He is Mr. Peri Warjiyo. And again, who is this guy? And more importantly, what does he really citate that's worth paying attention to? So there's this report from McKinsey. I cited them in the past, a great consultancy firm, probably one of the best. But it's the Global Fintech Index by 2025. We're only about like a few months from 2025. We're not at, obviously, November 2025. That's about a year away, a little over a year away. But look what it says in regards to this index, everybody. 90% of the adult population included in financial inclusion. 90%, along with increasing funding to 10 billion, creating USD4 or US dollars equivalent of cost efficiencies and further diversified fintech models. As you get more into this, remember how we talked about De Nederlandsche Bank? Well, in the Netherlands, that's aka Holland, just in case you're not good with geography, they currently are in a situation, at least then, where they have a 60-40 distribution of cash versus non-cash. I'm telling you flat out, you got to pay attention to this. In the national forum, the banking sector expressed an ambition to reduce that further to 25% in 2025. My God. All right, come back into the frame, Max, right? Let's talk about that for a second. And yes, this is turning into a deep dive once again. But again, if there is this radical shift to get off, clearly off of cash, it's not just US dollars, off of cash in itself. When we talk about money supply, or actually not money supply, supply and demand, like price shock, it has to be some of these examples. And more importantly, it has to be in reference to all these things that was outlined from this Ripple pitch to the central bank of Indonesia. Because let's face it, their ties to who? Their ties to the International Monetary Fund, their ties to the Bank of International Settlements, and more importantly, how they are part of that marketplace of central banks. They have their own ecosystem. Check this out. This gets really, really interesting. So if that's a radical shift, maybe that is the reset. Understanding going from some of these crazy percentages down to only 25%. Still 5 or 6 years to go, but they see a decline in interest to further reduce cash usage. Yeah, no kidding. And for example, they don't want to get into a situation like exists in Sweden. But again, back to that reference about 2025. All right, there's more about this. It talks about that you have this report of, at least back in 2018, 2019, that they measure a pursuit of an ambition on the supply side in banking services of 25% cash usage by 2025. But they say it with confidence. My God. But only in coordination with all stakeholders, because they do not want to get a situation where the public opposes, of course, reduction. All right. We'll see how that pans out. We'll see how this ages. But more importantly, I want to take you to this guy that we were just talking about. And this is where, of course, I'm providing you my own research. Perry Warjiyo. When you look more into this guy, you're going to understand that this was definitely 100% strategically designed. I think Verson of, Black Swan Capitalist, I think he's 100% spot on with his analogy about the whole concept of, these banks were given XRP, because clearly it says this in this document. And on top of that, that they all agreed upon a price. And if you don't believe me, that's another, part of the deep dive that I've done before in the past. And of course, if you're new to the channel, you will see a card at the very end that will link you to that video. But let's get into why I'm pointing this guy out to you. So this guy is the current governor of Bank of Indonesia. By the way, he got reelected. I'll show you that here in a bit. And the point is, it's what he has been connected to. Look at this. In Indonesia, they're frequently appointing professionals with strong economic and policy making experience. This guy's got a ton of that. But more importantly, as I got more into the whole thing, did he ever study over here abroad, like in the United States? Yeah, he did. He went to Iowa State University, but he has done work with the government. And look at this. Look at this guy's rap sheet, resume. 1995, he was part of the balance of payment section. He was the head guy, I should say. He's also, in 1997, was the head of monetary policy in the analysis section. He was head bureau of, governor. He was, for example, deputy director of economic research and monetary policy. He was the director of, Center of Education and Study of the Central Bank. And on top of that, where is the reference in regards to policy? Well, boom, right there, 2005. Executive director in 2007 for the IMF. And look at this, even Washington, representing the Southeast Asian voting group that includes a constituency of 13 countries in Southeast Asia. And of course, 2013 deputy governor of the Bank of Indonesia. And during his career in government, Perry Warjiyo acted as an advisor to Indonesian delegations to numerous international meetings, including the International Monetary Fund, World Bank, the G20, and the Bank of International Settlements. How about this? It gets even better. In 2019, he received an award for his achievements in terms of maintaining economic stability in Indonesia despite economic and political shock and throughout the digital transformation undertaken by Bank Indonesia. All right. So this guy's obviously has an impressive, more than impressive rap sheet, if you will. Okay. Look at this. This is from the citation of Iowa State University. You see here that, of course, he's got a PhD in economics. I mean, this guy's pretty darn smart. But here's another statement that I think is worth pointing out. He was one of their very best graduate students, said Wallace Huffman, and that was Warjiyo's major professor. This guy spent his entire career working, or I should say entire career, but he put a lot of work into the Central Bank of Indonesia. He was the first chief economist to the governor of the head of the central bank, and then of course deputy governor for that particular central bank. So I want to play this. Listen to this. This is also good because, again, he was appointed to his second term. And if anything, I'm telling you flat out, listen what is being presented here. Here we go. We'll come right back.
Welcome back. In Indonesia, Perry Warjiyo has once again been named the governor of Bank Indonesia for the period between 2023 to 2028. Mr. Warjiyo first began serving as the Indonesian Central Bank governor in 2018 and has been viewed as successful in guiding Indonesia through the hardships of the pandemic.
Commission 11 of the Indonesian House of Representatives have, by acclamation, once again appointed Perry Warjiyo as the governor of Bank Indonesia for the period between 2023 to 2028. Mr. Warjiyo will continue his role after first being appointed in 2018. The head of the House's Commission 11, Kahar Muzakir, said that Perry Warjiyo has been competent and successful in drawing up effective monetary policies that have guided Indonesia through the hardships of the COVID-19 pandemic.
You guys get the gist about Perry Warjiyo, right? I mean, it seems as though it's plain as day that this guy's a very important person. But more in particular, I want to get into a little bit more about this. So it's the coordination. Remember how we talked about all this stuff has been strategically planned? I think it's a real thing, okay? You see things about a central bank mandate. Again, back to this PDF. Moderator says, should we stick to the central bank mandate? Now, I get it. There's lots of different types of mandates, but more in particular, look what you see here. It says the central bank mandate is a given. We operate within this. I do not know every jurisdiction's mandate, how it's being changed, how the banking law basically is, but for central banks, it's the process that is necessary to change the mandate and take on added services. Okay? At the moment, our remit and mandate are certain. Anything beyond that is careful area for us. And of course, back to cigar of Ripple at that time. And it's recognizing that, again, this is from another person, Ace Zuzma, but the central bank mandate, they operate within this, and they understand that there's this whole thing about how the banking law for central banks has a necessary mandate to change all of this, right? Well, more importantly, look what it says here about the core mandate. Again, back to the IMF. Because here it gets kind of strange. Or if anything, strange as in, was this strategically designed a long time ago? So what do we have? Literally, this is what it says. Back then, they had 4 main objectives and 12 elements. And they said that this is at a high level because we at the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, like to be at a high level in order to protect ourselves so nobody can claim that the IMF said this or said that. Well, sorry, cat's out of the bag, especially with this document. Seriously, we have 4 objectives, and one of the objectives is that they have the right environment to harness the opportunities from Fintech. The objective is to strengthen the financial sector policy framework. This is a core mandate of the IMF. So again, understand this guy, I think we should look more into it. A lot of focus on, obviously, Augustine Carstens, but this guy plays a huge role, does he not? Third objective is to address the potential risk and improve resilience. And the other thing is, keep in mind what you see here. They mention specifically some key things here. And that is, and I know I'm reading a lot of this, but again, this is a deleted document. It's what this fund has undertaken then, and where they've gone as far as, let's face it, where we're headed to, especially by 2025, everybody. So, enabling the new tech to enhance financial service provision is one of their main elements of the BFA. They want to foster financial inclusion. They want to preserve this whole concept of what the World Bank has been working on under Madame Lagarde. And remember, come on, I mean, the European Union. So they have been involved with this for at least 6 to 7 years prior to 2019. But again, it's this framework reference. And man, it gets good. They state that this initiative, if you want to call it, is a core function of the IMF. It's part of its mandate. And as I got more into it, I was like, what in the world is this? And why does everything relate back to this guy, Mr. Perry, So it talks about this whole concept of a payment system. And more in particular, it talks about, the mandate from the fintech industry on payments. And look what it talks about even after that. It talks about the need for a sandbox, a regulatory sandbox. So I decided to jump more into this outline, and I saw here, specifically speaking, that constant references to a mandate of payments, but again, how they are trying to tackle this, how they are trying to get something going in regards to everything. And back to that reference that we had earlier, it's money licenses, I should say, for transferring of e-money, right? E-money. Again, bridge currencies, basically speaking. So, what are they trying to tackle? And if anything, where does this really go? Look at this for a second. This guy, Jan Don, was a government-mandated directive to all public sector banks to ensure that they open what they call a zero balance savings account for the entire rural population. And it goes on to mention that they, at least back in 2016, recognized China as the first digital bank to start the whole thing of using blockchain for loans. Now, I know this sounds nuts, but again, remember how China shut down everything? I'm not going to get into that, but look what it says. Their loans are not only from their bank, but also from other banks. They use blockchain as a reconciliation mandate. Before they had blockchain, at least in China, banks had to reconcile with them on a T+1 or T+2 basis. Target 1, target 2, if you're wondering what that means. Since the use of blockchain, reconciliation is done at T+1 second. That is one of the advantages, of course, of using blockchain. Now get this, and if anything, you're going to see a logo change on your screen, and you're going to wonder why that is. Boom, there you go. This is going to pound home everything that I've been talking about, as well as other researchers. And here it is. This is the Bank of Indonesia. This is the Central Bank of Indonesia, stating there have been several positive regulations that have led to the fintech ecosystem in Indonesia, including regulatory sandbox. Bank Indonesia has launched a fintech office which demonstrates the seriousness with which they are looking at the fintech ecosystem in the market. The online identity verification platform is an important development. My God, this is a deleted document, for crying out loud. A full-fledged version of this is likely to be critical enabler of a fully functioning credit bureau and national level digital identifier for KYC, aka Know Your Customer. If you draw examples from India, that has been the holy grail for fintech to operate. Okay, so that's the bank. That's the Central Bank of Indonesia recognizing this. Now check this out. If you were to go over to Forbes, there's a citation I think all of us should really look into. 5 key lessons the India stack offers global fintech. This dates back to 2023, okay? But as I got into this, there's this company. They're called Aadhaar. I'm telling you, this is really going to add up. And it's India's biometric identification system. They provided, at least then, a unique digital identity enabling seamless and secure authentication of various financial transactions, while eliminating physical identification documents in the KYC process. Does that not match up to what you saw in the PDF? But more importantly, check this out, because the next thing that mentions underneath it is mobile, and how they recognize that mobile banking apps and wallets and payment systems allow users to securely perform a wide range, of course, of their activities. Again, Finternet reference. As I jump into it, I said to myself, who puts a lot of emphasis, specifically speaking, on the whole thing of what? Biometrics and contactless payments. Yeah, it's Bajit. It's Jasmy's Bajit. Because guess what? In the 2024 report, even here we are. Come on, man. Look at this. I don't know what you guys are doing. People say my video is too long, but man, where it really counts, this is good. Top 5 use cases for facial recognition in 2024. Look at the data. Face scans or facial recognition is becoming more popular than ever before. There's so many use cases of face recognition. And it's basically this whole concept will revolutionize the identification industry very soon. Yes, but more importantly, look what it says in regards to this analysis. Currently, among the critical applications of facial recognition technology, 68% of people use it to unlock their phones, laptops, or other personal computers. 51% use it to log into different applications, and 42% of, it goes to the access of a bank account or another financial institution. Right. Absolutely. So again, look what's going to say here. And this pounds home the whole thing of this concept of a holy grail for fintech. And again, from that Ripple reference, from the Central Bank of Indonesia reference, they already get it when it comes to Ripple. But more importantly, they said that if there was some kind of mechanism, that would be the holy grail of it all. My God. So from Bajit, because we understand Bajit's connections to Jasmy, same executives basically for the most part, Jasmy and also in Bajit, Kuntaki Ando, Kazumasa Sato, and so on. But look what it says in the highlights, everybody. Convenient contactless payments and customized shopping experiences. Remember how we talked about the super wallet for Jasmy? Some of you guys, like, you don't get this because you don't listen to my Jasmy material. But I think, if anything, you might want to start considering it. Because when you see the reference about this pounds home Jasmy's concept moving forward of that super wallet. It's not out, but facial recognition based payment systems can be the future of the contactless payment. Customers don't need to juggle around the cards anymore at all, or even remember pins or passwords. Apart from that, using FRT in shopping centers can enhance the shopping experience of customers because it recognizes customers and creates a personalized shopping experience and recommendations based on the history of previous purchases. Who's already doing this here, everybody? Amazon is doing it. They already have like these Amazon stores you can go into. I know some people don't like that, but it's a real thing. Now check this out. I'm telling you, this gets really good. This is from biometricupdate.com. Japan trials My Number Card app, stricter IDV following fraud incidents. August 6th, last month. Back to the whole thing about Taro Kono. How many times have I covered him? But on August 1st, Digital Minister Taro Kono oversaw the trial of the upcoming My Number Card face-to-face verification app set for release in late August. But he responded to the incidents of forged My Number cards being used for identity verification. Right, cards. But more importantly, putting that all on blockchain, right? And that's where it's at. That's where it will always be at. Because when you see statements like this, the Apple Mobile, again, back to the whole phone reference, ID goes global with Japan's My Number collaboration. Understand that this is all aging extremely well. June 3rd, 2024, Japan is poised to become the first country outside the United States where an official government-issued digital ID will be supported in the iPhone's Apple Wallet. Apple has announced that starting in late spring 2025, again, back to 2025, Japanese citizens will be able to load a virtual version of their My Number card, of course, on their iOS device. And what does it say? Originally introduced in 2016. So, again, this reference to the 2018-2019 PDF from Central Bank of Indonesia, again, they recognize probably some of this stuff years ago. And here's the other thing, because we did mention Jasmy. From an LinkedIn post, Jasmy, and I cover this, but this is just a good highlight, merges with Japan's My Number Card and iTrust authentication service. The My Number Card, which is a digital ID issued by the Japanese government, holds unique info, guys. Japan, with Jasmy's tech integrated into CyberTrust Japan, uses the card's electronic certificate to securely authenticate to users online, eliminating document exchange and wait times. This partnership advances Japan's digital ID landscape, enhancing online service accessibility and transaction security. Yeah, congrats. Yeah, congrats, because guess what? Jasmy, is the PDL the holy grail of it all? I mean, literally, come on, think about it, everybody. I know I'm getting excited, but sometimes it's worth getting excited about. Because when you stay the course with these deep dives I've been doing with you guys, this community that we have, I do miss doing some of the live shows. You know, I work 3 jobs 7 days a week, and I try my best to make time to do these deep dives. But guess what? It pounds home everything. There, you know, if hype is warranted, this is a time that it's definitely warranted, because that PDF absolutely ages extremely well. All right, 2 more citations to get into. Shout out to Neo X Tricks. Neo, I hope you're feeling better, because he said he was feeling ill. So get well soon, brother. Look what he has here. And I've cited this before, but again, this is for all the people that may not even know about Jasmy, because you're only focused on Ripple's XRP. And I don't say that disrespectfully speaking, but understand, when you see statements about a holy grail part of it, this is the connector. So NeoXTrix says the identification service using Japanese My Number card is linked to the Jasmy PDL platform, now available in the App Store. Jasmy PDL, identity verification system. Identity verification using My Number cards and collaboration, of course, with the darn PDL. And I've shared this in other deep dives. There is some of the illustrations. Works with Jasmy Personal Data Locker to do what? Enable secure use of identity verification information. And to close things out, shout out to another great researcher, Dip Metaverse. Always follow these guys, whether it's NeoXTrix, excuse me, let me go back. He could be followed at Beta 817, or whether it's Dip Metaverse. Understand these guys have great research. So listen to this. This connects everything. Dip Metaverse posted this a few months ago. I remember when he did this. I've also covered the whole thing of Jasmy and Ripple about a year ago with Will Fix. But look what it says. Along with this post, he thinks that Ripple will invest in Jasmy if they haven't already done so. Call him crazy, but by the end of summer 2025, oh my goodness, if this doesn't exceed, again, this all is in alignment with everything. I mean, you can't make this stuff up because you just got to reference some of the documents. So if Ripple is starting to fund, so Ripple is starting a fund, I should say, to invest in blockchain companies in South Korea and Japan. The fund will invest 1 billion XRP, roughly $475 to $500 million worth of US dollars. Hara has mentioned that South Korea, among other Asian countries, are being a big part of Jasmy's business. Digital assets are a big part of Japan's national society. It seems like there's only a few known blockchain companies. They can obviously invest in exchanges, but it might be a conflict to invest in anything else. But Bitcoin Japan, because SBI and Ripple have a joint venture together. Again, this is how it all comes together. There's 3 crypto projects in Japan that he knows of. Of course, A-Star is one of them. There's also Soramitsu. Shout out to Jack Thompson in regards to his Soramitsu. But just a few days ago, at least it wasn't a few days ago, but even our researcher Houston was kind enough to point out that Japanese VCs are able to invest in blockchain companies due to a law that was passed in, of course, Japan. And that's where it's basically at. Understand that you can look more into this, but this is all aging extremely well because Japan, as we know, is one of the friendliest sets of blockchain laws, even though they're strict and they seem to be even friendlier. But Ripple seems to agree with this whole initiative. And Japan is basically planning everything when it comes to passing laws and making blockchain crypto environment fair and flexible. If anything, Jasmy was the first to become regulatory compliant in, of course, Japan. There's a lot of evidence to back up all of this, but based on the evidence and the conjectures above, it's Dip Metaverse's belief that Ripple will purchase some Jasmy for its Japan-Korea fund. And of course, he has citations that gets more into that. Look more into it if you haven't done so already. For me, personally speaking, moving forward, I want everybody to understand this. I get it, guys. Some people are maxis on one particular coin, which is Ripple's XRP. But that statement, plain as day, on that pitch that dates back to 2018 in that particular document, says magnitudes of profound, speaks volumes, because it's the connectors, and it always will be. If we reference things like R3 Corda with XDC Bridge, that's a connector. If we reference, for example, Quant with the Overledger, that's a connector. Also, Jasmy with IoT, and especially with the PDL, this quote-unquote holy grail, if you will, that's a connector also. So I'm really glad to present this to you guys in regards to Ripple's XRP. And if you want to call it this bombshell, I know it kind of labeled a little bit differently. I did it strategically because we talked about doing strategic things for you guys that are only focused on Ripple, because you needed to see that. There you go. Let me know what you think in regards to this. And if you listen to the entire outline, do me a quick, simple favor and simply type into the comments HG as in Holy Grail, and I will know that you listen to the entire outline. I always appreciate you guys listening to these outlines, and I'm glad to be able to provide it to an audience that does appreciate it. I know that my outlines are way longer than most, and it's only for a certain niche of people, but you guys being part of that niche means a lot. Have a blessed rest of your day, everybody. Know what you have, know why you hold it. The research trumps FUD 110%. We'll see you on the next one.
If managing your crypto feels like solving a puzzle, it's time to switch to Decent Wallet. Say goodbye to complicated setups and hello to Decent Wallet, the hassle-free solution to your digital currency needs. With just a few taps, you can manage, track, and secure your crypto with unmatched ease. And here's the best part. Grab your Decent Wallet at a discounted price by using the referral link below. Don't miss out on making your crypto experience smoother and more secure.